Muhannad Ayyash, a professor of sociology at the Mount Royal University. He joins us live from Alberta in Canada. Professor, thank you for your time. I've been going through your social media. You have an interesting way of viewing this conflict. Tweeting in the last hour, Israel, according to Israel, the Iranian attack was a complete failure and it did nothing. It was completely ineffective. Also Israel, the attack was so serious that we must go to war with Iran now, and we asked the US to help us destroy the whole country. Indeed, you are highlighting the inconsistencies by these parties involved.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you're so confident in your ability to stop the attack, you wouldn't frame it as this existential threat now to you, that you now need to go and invade Iran and destroy it, and they're going to suffer all the consequences. And Netanyahu given a speech even before this attack saying to the people of Iran, which is funny that he's speaking to the people of Iran in English, so he clearly wasn't really talking to them, but, making it clear that the Iranian people might see a regime change sooner than rather than later. So this has been part of Israel's desire for decades, certainly Netanyahu's, but the Israeli state in general, to eliminate all Arab regimes that show any resistance to the idea and practice of Israeli colonization of Palestine. And that is the root cause of everything here, is Israel's colonization of Palestine, its intention and plan to expel Palestinians from their land and create exclusive Israeli Jewish sovereignty over the entirety of the land of historic Palestine. This is why there is resistance to Israel from the Iranian regime, from the Arab nations across the Arab world, across the Middle East and beyond. The messages are always going to be confusing because from a logical standpoint, precisely because Israel is always trying to twist around reality in order to justify what is an unjustifiable project, which is the expulsion of the Palestinian people from their land.
And on that point, that's a great point, by the way, over the course of this conflict since October 7th, even way before then, between Israel and Hamas, we've heard terminology that oftentimes removes the humanity from people in Gaza, for example, calling Palestinian children minors versus calling Israeli children children. I wonder if this is a deliberate attempt by Israel to create this, as part of a huge plan to create a good versus evil storyline, and hence justify the killing of innocent people, you think, and even often citing religious text to support their ambitions.
Oh, you're absolutely correct. And Israel and the Zionist project has been dehumanizing Palestinians for decades. This isn't anything new. This has been happening for decades and decades. And it is a feature, by the way, of all settler colonial projects and projects of genocide and ethnic cleansing, is the dehumanization of the people of the land that you want to colonize and expel and kill without feeling any consequence for doing that. So there is a massive problem of the dehumanization of the Palestinian people in Western discourse, which is wholeheartedly supportive of the Israeli colonial project. So the Americans are not some neutral player in this game. They're active participants in the colonization of Palestine. That's why you see widespread dehumanization of Palestinians in American media, in Canadian media, in British media, in French media, German media, and so on, because it is a form of justifying what is ultimately an unjustifiable act of violence and expulsion of people. What people in history in the world today would take kindly to invaders coming in and taking their lands and expelling them from it and killing thousands upon thousands of their people, destroying their entire societies? Of course, nobody takes kindly to that. Nobody can really justify that. So the dehumanization of the Palestinians comes in to justify what is ultimately an unjustifiable act. But of course, people in the region don't buy into that dehumanization. And there are many people around the world, not just in the region, and increasingly in Western spaces where people are no longer buying into that narrative and see Palestinians as people. I mean, I've always said this, all you have to do to stop believing this propaganda, this Israeli state propaganda, American propaganda, is to just simply see Palestinians as people like you who want the same things as you do and suffer the same way you would suffer if you were facing the things that the Palestinians have been facing. So all you have to do is see the humanity of the Palestinians in order to see through this propaganda and these dehumanizing efforts.
But are enough people not buying into the Israeli rhetoric? I mean, in countries that matter, the top echelon of countries, if you like, the global north, are enough civilians not buying into this rhetoric? Because it seems as though no one can convince their government to somehow effect change where it's needed.
I mean, as your previous correspondent from the U.S. mentioned, increasingly the younger generation are in massive numbers not believing this propaganda and not buying into it. And you see it, for example, in the student movements and the student in campus on universities across the U.S., Canada, and elsewhere. So I think increasingly the younger generation is no longer buying into that discourse. But unfortunately, they're still unable, even with a large number of people, they're still unable to force their institution or pressure their institutions into changing their positions. The institutions such as the United States government, universities, and so on are so entrenched in that imperial structure of American imperial interests in the region, which views Israel as a critical imperial outpost that they're not ready to let go of. I'm afraid that what I'm talking about in these kinds of shifts, we will have to wait long term to see their effects and consequences. But of course, the Palestinian people don't have that time to waste. So change is not happening fast enough. But I do believe that there are going to be long-term consequences for all of these actions that are going right now. The genocide of the Palestinian people, the indiscriminate bombing and killing of Lebanese civilians. What I fear may be coming to the people of Iran, what people in Yemen, in Iraq, and other places have been facing as well. The death and destruction this will bring to the region if we do escalate into a full-blown regional war. These violences will have very long-term consequences that are going to affect everybody. Nobody can tell you right now, neither myself or anybody can tell you what those consequences will be, but that there will be consequences is a certainty as far as I'm concerned.
Just before I let you go, Professor, I hate being hyperbolic, but this is popping up on social media everywhere. Are we seeing the start of a third world war?
It's difficult to say this. Obviously on social media, you've seen the predictions for the start of Third World War quite a lot the last few years. I'm not going to engage in that. Predicting wars and politics is a dangerous game. You will look foolish a lot of the times because it's hard to predict. And the reason it's hard to predict because most of the major players themselves aren't really in control of the events. The events become so strong in their own dynamics that they come to shape even the major actors' own decisions and policies. So are we heading towards a path that leads to a great world war? I don't see anything that suggests that we're not. I'll say that. But when that is going to happen, I don't know, and nobody can really tell you.
And this is while we contend with an existential crisis, which is the climate crisis at the same time. Professor, it was a real pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.